Rebecca Montgomery stands in the parking lot of Harmony Hills Care Facility at 9:47 p.m., her car keys in hand, having just signed the final papers committing her 23-year-old autistic son permanently to institutional care. She told herself it was the right decision, the necessary decision, the only decision. But as she reaches for her car door, the temperature drops 40 degrees in an instant, and a figure made of impossible light stands between her and escape. Jesus Christ has come, not to comfort, but to make her experience every moment of loneliness, confusion, and abandonment her son will feel in the room. She just locked him in every night. He'll wait for a mother who will never come. You're probably wondering how a 52-year-old successful corporate lawyer with a beautiful house in Connecticut ended up in a care facility parking lot at night, face to face with Jesus Christ, about to experience 23 years of her autistic son's isolation and abandonment from his perspective. Every moment he'd reached for her and she'd pulled away, every birthday she'd missed, every confused question about why mommy doesn't visit anymore. Let me take you back to when Rebecca Montgomery gave birth to a son she'd prayed for, and how, when that son didn't develop the way she'd expected, didn't meet her dreams, didn't fit into her successful life, she began the slow process of erasing him from her world. If you or someone you know is experiencing abuse, pause this video. I'm putting resources in the description that could save a life. Special needs parenting is one of the hardest callings on earth. Raising a child with severe autism requires patience most people don't have, sacrifices most people can't imagine, and a level of daily devotion that can break even the strongest person. This story acknowledges that truth, but it's also about something darker. What happens when a parent decides their special needs child is too inconvenient for their successful life? When shame about having a different child turns into emotional abandonment? When a mother chooses her career, her image, her comfort over her son's most basic need, to be loved by his mother? Rebecca Montgomery was 52 years old, a partner at a prestigious law firm in Hartford, Connecticut. She earned $450,000 annually. She lived in a beautiful colonial home in West Hartford. She drove a Mercedes. She was respected, successful, accomplished. She also had a son named Daniel, who was 23 years old, nonverbal, autistic, and living in a care facility 45 minutes from her house, a facility she visited perhaps twice a year, if that. Daniel Montgomery had been diagnosed with severe autism at age 3. He was nonverbal, needed assistance with daily tasks, had sensory sensitivities, and would likely never live independently. He wasn't the child Rebecca had imagined. He didn't achieve, didn't excel, didn't make her look good at cocktail parties. And so, slowly, systematically, Rebecca had erased him from her life. First emotionally pulling away, becoming frustrated, seeing him as a burden rather than her son, then physically placing him in increasingly distant care facilities, visiting less frequently, eventually treating him like an obligation she was paying for, rather than a human being she'd brought into the world. This is the story of maternal abandonment disguised as getting him professional care, of a mother who chose her successful image over her son's most fundamental need, of a young man with autism who waited every day for a mother who never came, not because she couldn't, but because she chose not to. And it's the story of how Jesus Christ appeared in a parking lot on November 3rd, 2023, and did something that would shatter Rebecca's comfortable rationalizations. He made her experience Daniel's loneliness from the inside out. Every night he'd cried for her, every visitor's day he'd waited by the window, every moment of confusion about why mommy abandoned him. Before we continue, if you believe in second chances and the power of faith, type restore in the comments right now. Let your voice be the spark of hope for a family in need. Show the world your faith in action. Rebecca Montgomery gave birth to Daniel on the 15th of March, 2001. She was 29 years old, newly made partner at her law firm, married to Thomas Montgomery, a financial advisor. The pregnancy had been planned, carefully timed, for when Rebecca's career was stable enough to accommodate maternity leave. She'd prepared meticulously, the perfect nursery, the best pediatrician, a detailed plan for balancing career and motherhood. Daniel was beautiful, healthy, perfect on paper. For the first 2 years, everything seemed normal. Daniel hit most early milestones, sitting up, crawling, walking. Rebecca went back to work after 3 months, hired an excellent nanny, managed her dual life of corporate lawyer and mother, with the efficiency she applied to everything. But around age 2, something shifted. Daniel stopped making eye contact, stopped responding to his name, began repetitive behaviors, lining up toys, rocking, spinning. He didn't develop language like other toddlers. By age 3, while other children were speaking in sentences, Daniel was nonverbal. Rebecca took him to specialists. The diagnosis came when Daniel was 3 years and 2 months old. Autism spectrum disorder, level 3, requiring very substantial support. Nonverbal, likely would never speak. Would need lifelong care and assistance. Rebecca's first reaction wasn't grief for Daniel's challenges. It was grief for her shattered expectations. This wasn't the child she'd planned for. Not the son who would go to Yale like she had. Not the accomplished child who would make her look good. Not the easy addition to her successful life. Thomas, Daniel's father, tried to be supportive. We'll figure this out together. We'll get him the best therapies, the best education. Thomas, he's never going to be normal. Rebecca interrupted, her voice cold. Do you understand that? Our son is going to be disabled for life. This is permanent. He's still our son, Thomas said quietly. He still deserves our love. But Rebecca struggled to feel that love. When she looked at Daniel, who would have meltdowns in public, who required constant supervision, who would never have the milestones she dreamed of, she felt primarily resentment. She began avoiding parent events at his special needs preschool, would schedule business meetings to miss therapy appointments, would leave Daniel's care entirely to the nanny and Thomas. Friends would ask about her son, and Rebecca learned to deflect. He's doing fine, progressing in his own way. She never said the word autism, never explained, just created vague impressions that Daniel was typical. The truth was, Rebecca was ashamed of her son, ashamed that he was different, ashamed that he didn't fit her image of success, ashamed to be the mother of a disabled child. By the time Daniel was 7, Thomas had had enough. Rebecca, you're his mother. You can't keep avoiding him. He needs you. I provide for him, Rebecca said defensively. He has the best therapies, the best education, the best care money can buy. He doesn't need your money. He needs your presence, your love. You're his mother. Thomas, I'm doing the best I can. Balancing my career and his needs. You're not balancing anything, Thomas interrupted, his voice hard now. You're choosing your career over your son. You're emotionally abandoning him because he's not the perfect child you wanted. The accusation was too close to truth. Rebecca went on the offensive. If you're so concerned, you take care of him. I'm working 60 hours a week to pay for all his therapies and special schools. Someone has to provide financially. It was a convenient excuse, but the truth was simpler. Rebecca didn't want to be Daniel's mother. Not if being his mother meant dealing with autism, with meltdowns, with a son who would never be normal. The marriage deteriorated. Thomas tried to compensate for Rebecca's emotional absence, being there for Daniel, attending every IEP meeting, every therapy session, every school event. But he couldn't be both parents. When Daniel was 9, Thomas and Rebecca divorced. The custody arrangement revealed Rebecca's priorities. Thomas got primary physical custody. Rebecca got weekend visitation, which she rarely used, always finding excuses about work obligations. Daniel lived with his father. Rebecca sent child support checks and told herself that was enough. Over the next decade, Rebecca's involvement in Daniel's life became increasingly minimal. When Daniel was 12, she missed his special needs school graduation because of a crucial deposition. When Daniel was 15, she forgot his birthday entirely, didn't call, didn't send a card, nothing. Thomas had to explain to Daniel why mommy didn't remember. Daniel, despite being nonverbal, understood more than people realized. He had a communication device, an iPad with specialized software that let him express basic needs and feelings. And regularly, the message he'd type was, "Mommy come," or "Mommy visit." Thomas would gently explain, "Mommy is very busy with work, buddy, but she loves you." The lies parents tell to protect their children from harder truths. When Daniel was 18, Thomas was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, stage 4, terminal. He had maybe a year. Thomas called Rebecca. "I'm dying. Daniel is going to need care. You're his mother. You need to step up. Rebecca felt panic, not grief for Thomas, not compassion for Daniel, but panic about her own life being disrupted. Thomas, I can't. My career, my life. I'm not equipped to care for someone with Daniel's needs. He's your son, Thomas said, his voice weak from chemotherapy. Your responsibility. I've carried it alone for 10 years. Now it's your turn. Can't we place him in a facility? A good one. I'll pay for it. He's not a problem to be warehoused, Thomas said, anger cutting through his exhaustion. He's a human being, your son, and he deserves to have his mother in his life. I'll visit regularly, Rebecca promised. I'll make sure he has the best care. Thomas knew she was lying. He'd heard those promises before. Thomas Montgomery died when Daniel was 19. At the funeral, Daniel, who rarely showed obvious emotions, sobbed. He typed on his device, "Daddy gone. Mommy stay?" Rebecca hugged him briefly, uncomfortable with the contact, with the emotional weight. Mommy will make sure you're taken care of. But taken care of didn't mean cared for by his mother. It meant placed in the best facility money could buy, so Rebecca could continue her life, uninterrupted. After Thomas's death, Daniel legally became Rebecca's responsibility. She had two choices: bring him home to live with her, or place him in a care facility. For Rebecca, it wasn't really a choice. Daniel living with her would mean completely restructuring her life, her work schedule, her social life, her carefully curated image of success. He would be visible. People would know she had a disabled son. She'd have to explain, to accommodate, to actually parent. No, a facility was the only option. Rebecca researched expensive care homes for adults with autism. She wanted the best, not because she loved Daniel, but because paying for the best facility assuaged her guilt about not caring for him herself. She found Harmony Hills Care Facility, a private institution specializing in adults with developmental disabilities. It was beautiful, modern buildings, spacious rooms, full-time staff, therapy services. It cost $12,000 per month. Rebecca could afford it easily. She toured the facility without Daniel, liked what she saw. Clean, professional, well-staffed. She could tell people Daniel was getting excellent professional care, and it would be true as far as it went. What it left out was the truth. Rebecca was choosing to pay strangers to love her son because she didn't want to do it herself. The placement process required a meeting with the facility's social worker, evaluating whether institutional care was truly necessary or if family care was viable. "Miss Montgomery," the social worker said, "Daniel is high support needs, certainly, but many families with similar situations care for their adult children at home with proper support services. Have you considered in-home care?" "I work full-time," Rebecca said. "Very demanding career. I'm not equipped to provide the level of care he needs. We have programs that could help respite care, in-home nursing, day programs. Daniel could live with you and receive professional support. I think residential care is best," Rebecca said firmly. "I want him to have 24/7 professional attention. At home, I'd be dividing my focus. Here, he'll have full-time care." The rationalization was sophisticated, but the truth underneath was simpler. Rebecca didn't want Daniel in her life, didn't want to see him daily, didn't want the inconvenience, the disruption, the visibility of having a disabled son. The social worker seemed skeptical, but couldn't deny that Harmony Hills would provide good care. The placement was approved. Rebecca brought Daniel to the facility on a Tuesday afternoon. He was 20 years old, a young man now, physically adult but developmentally still childlike in many ways. Daniel had been told he was moving to a new home. He didn't fully understand what that meant. He'd brought his iPad device, his favorite weighted blanket, some photos including one of Thomas, and one old picture of Rebecca from years ago when she used to visit more often. Rebecca walked Daniel to his room, a single occupancy space with a bed, desk, private bathroom, clean, functional, impersonal. "This is your new room," Rebecca said, her voice artificially bright. "Isn't it nice?" Daniel looked around, confused. He typed on his device, "Mommy stay?" "No, honey. Mommy has to go, but you'll have nice people here to help you." "Mommy visit?" "Yes, I'll visit. Soon." It was a lie. Rebecca had no intention of visiting regularly. She'd already calculated. Holidays, maybe, perhaps his birthday. But weekly visits? Monthly? No. This placement was specifically to create distance. Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He might be nonverbal and autistic, but he understood abandonment. He reached for Rebecca, tried to hug her, hold her, keep her from leaving. Rebecca gently but firmly extracted herself from his grip. "Daniel, you're a big boy now. You'll be fine here. Mommy has to go." She walked toward the door. Behind her, Daniel made a sound, a cry of distress, the kind of vocalization he made when something was deeply wrong. Rebecca paused at the threshold. For just a moment, maternal instinct whispered, "Turn around, stay with him, he needs you." But Rebecca's self-preservation was stronger. She left, walked down the hallway, signed the final paperwork, got in her Mercedes and drove away. Behind her, in that small institutional room, Daniel sat on the bed, rocking, tears on his face, typing on his device. "Mommy, come back. Daddy gone. Mommy, come back." But Mommy didn't come back. Not that day, not that week, not for 2 months. If this moment is touching your heart, share your story or a prayer request in the comments below. Someone watching may need the encouragement only you can give. Tag a friend who could use this message of hope today. For the next 3 years, from age 20 to 23, Daniel lived at Harmony Hills Care Facility, and Rebecca visited him perhaps 6 times total. She'd call occasionally, brief conversations where staff would hold the phone to Daniel's ear, and Rebecca would say, "Hi, honey, how are you?" before making excuses about being too busy to visit. She'd send gifts on holidays, items selected by her assistant, purchased online, shipped directly. She never visited for Christmas, Thanksgiving, his birthday, always had work obligations. The staff at Harmony Hills noticed. They worked with many families. Some visited daily, some weekly, some monthly. But Daniel's mother? Maybe twice a year, if that. "Does Daniel have any family?" New staff members would ask. "He has a mother," the senior care worker would say carefully. "She's very busy with work," the euphemism for abandonment. Daniel waited. Every visiting day Sundays, he'd position himself near the window of the common area, watching for his mother's car, watching visitors arrive for other residents, watching his window hopefully. She never came. He'd type on his device, "Mommy today?" And staff would have to gently tell him no, not today. Over 3 years, Daniel's affect became more withdrawn. Depression is common in people with autism, though it manifests differently. Daniel stopped engaging as much in activities, stopped smiling as frequently, spent more time alone in his room. A therapist at the facility noted in his chart, "Daniel appears to be experiencing symptoms consistent with grief and abandonment. Recommend family therapy and increased family contact." The recommendation was sent to Rebecca. She ignored it. Too busy, too uncomfortable, too committed to keeping Daniel at arm's length. Meanwhile, Rebecca's life flourished. She made senior partner, bought a vacation home in the Hamptons, traveled to Europe, dated successful men, built a life that looked perfect from outside, successful, wealthy, accomplished. When friends or colleagues asked about children, Rebecca had a practiced response. "I have a son. He's in a specialized residential program. Very expensive, very exclusive. He's getting excellent care." She made it sound like a boarding school for gifted children rather than a care facility for abandoned disabled adults. She never said autism, never explained, created vague impressions that let people fill in their own assumptions. Rebecca had successfully erased Daniel from her public life, and increasingly, from her private life too. Days would pass where she didn't think about him at all. He became an expense on her budget, $12,000 per month for care facility, and occasional guilty twinges she'd learned to suppress. 3 years after placing Daniel at Harmony Hills, Rebecca received a call from the facility director. "Miss Montgomery, we need to discuss Daniel's long-term placement. Our facility is primarily designed for temporary, residential care with family involvement. Daniel has been here 3 years with minimal family contact. We need to clarify if this is now a permanent arrangement." "What are you asking?" Rebecca said, though she knew. "We're asking if you're planning to ever bring Daniel back to family care, or if you'd like to pursue permanent conservatorship and long-term institutional placement." Permanent. The word should have felt heavy, but to Rebecca, it felt like relief. What would permanent placement involve? You'd sign legal documents making this Daniel's permanent residence. You'd relinquish day-to-day parental rights to the state conservatorship program, though you'd maintain financial responsibility. Essentially, we'd become Daniel's permanent caregivers, and you'd be more like a distant relative. Occasional visits, financially supportive, but not actively involved in his daily life. Would I still be able to visit? Of course, anytime, but honestly, Miss Montgomery, you visit maybe twice a year now. Permanent placement wouldn't change your current involvement. It would just formalize what's already happening. The words stung because they were true. Rebecca told herself she'd think about it. But really, she'd already decided. Permanent placement was the final step in a 3-year process of abandonment. It would give her legal and emotional permission to fully remove Daniel from her life. On November 3rd, 2023, Rebecca drove to Harmony Hills to sign the permanent placement papers. She'd scheduled it for evening after work, after visiting hours, when Daniel would already be in his room for the night. She didn't want to see him. This was a legal transaction, not an emotional goodbye. She met with the facility director in his office, reviewed the documents, asked questions about financial obligations. She'd still pay, but the facility would assume legal guardianship. Confirmed she could still visit theoretically, though they both knew she wouldn't. Miss Montgomery, I have to ask, have you considered family counseling, bringing Daniel home with proper support? He's your son. He asks about you constantly. Daniel is better off here with professional care, Rebecca said, her voice firm. I'm not equipped to care for someone with his needs. This is what's best for him. The lie she'd been telling herself for 3 years, that abandoning her son was actually in his best interest. She signed the papers, multiple forms, legal language that essentially said, I am permanently relinquishing my role as Daniel's primary caregiver and giving that responsibility to the state system. It was done. Daniel was no longer her active responsibility, just a name on her monthly expense report, just an occasional guilty thought she'd continue to suppress. Rebecca walked out of the office at 9:45 p.m., heading toward the parking lot. The papers were filed. Daniel was upstairs in his room, probably already asleep, unaware that his mother had just legally abandoned him permanently. Rebecca reached her Mercedes, keys in hand, feeling lighter than she'd felt in years. This chapter was closed. She could move forward with her successful life without the complicated burden of a disabled son. She was reaching for her car door when the temperature dropped 40 degrees in an instant. 9:47 p.m. The parking lot. Rebecca's breath became visible in the air. Frost formed on her windshield. The November evening had been cool, but not cold, until suddenly it was freezing. What? Rebecca looked around, confused, and that's when she saw him. Between her and her car, a figure stood where no one had been seconds before. A man dressed in simple white robes that seemed to glow from within, radiating light that pushed back the darkness of the parking lot. Rebecca's rational lawyer mind tried to process. Hallucination? Stroke? Someone playing a prank? But even as she thought it, she knew this was real. More real than anything she'd ever experienced. Jesus Christ stood before her, his eyes holding both infinite compassion and absolute judgment. Rebecca Montgomery, he said, and his voice filled the entire parking lot, despite being spoken softly. You just signed papers permanently abandoning your son, committing him to institutional care not because he needs it, but because he's inconvenient to your successful life. Rebecca's mouth went dry. This isn't real. This is stress. Or, this is judgment, Jesus interrupted. Judgment I've delayed for 3 years while Daniel waited for a mother who never came. Judgment that arrives tonight, because what you just did in that office, legally erasing your son from your life, that was the final abandonment. He moved closer, and Rebecca wanted to get in her car and drive away, but found herself unable to move. Do you know why I'm here? Jesus asked. Rebecca shook her head, though terrible suspicions were forming. I'm here because Daniel prays every night. He can't speak, but he can communicate with me. And every night, he prays the same thing. Jesus, make mommy come. Make mommy love me. Make mommy visit. 3 years of prayers. 1,095 nights of a disabled young man begging me to make his mother love him. Tears formed in Rebecca's eyes, not yet from genuine sorrow, but from being caught from having her comfortable lies exposed. And tonight, Jesus continued, after you signed papers making his abandonment permanent, I'm answering his prayer, not by making you visit, but by making you feel exactly what Daniel has felt for 3 years. Every moment of loneliness, every Sunday he waited by the window, every night he cried himself to sleep, every birthday you missed, every holiday he spent surrounded by strangers while other residents had family. You're going to experience it all from his perspective. Please, Rebecca begged, I'll visit him. I'll bring him home. Just don't. You've had 3 years to visit him, Jesus said firmly. 3 years to bring him home. You've chosen your career, your image, your comfort over your son 1,000 times. Tonight, you don't get to choose. Tonight, you experience consequences. Jesus reached toward Rebecca's forehead. She tried to pull away, but his touch was inescapable. The moment his fingers made contact, the parking lot disappeared. Rebecca found herself transported into Daniel's experience, seeing and feeling everything from his perspective over the past 3 years. The first day. She experienced the day she'd brought Daniel to Harmony Hills, but now from his point of view, through Daniel's senses, Rebecca felt the confusion as his mother walked him into an unfamiliar building, felt his anxiety. People with autism often struggle with transitions, and this was massive change with no preparation. She felt Daniel's panic as Rebecca said goodbye and turned to leave, felt him trying to communicate through his device. Mommy, stay. Mommy, don't go. But watching from his perspective, Rebecca saw herself cold, distant, uncomfortable with his distress. Saw herself extract her hand from his grip like he was contaminating her. Saw herself walk away without looking back. Through Daniel's heart, Rebecca felt the devastating abandonment, the primal terror of being left in an unfamiliar place by the person who was supposed to protect him, the confusion about why Mommy was leaving, the desperate hope that she'd come back soon, today, tomorrow. She felt Daniel crying after Rebecca left, not tears of tantrum but tears of grief. Felt him rocking on his bed for hours, self-soothing, trying to regulate the overwhelming emotion of abandonment. The first weeks. The vision shifted to the weeks following placement. Rebecca experienced every Sunday when Daniel would position himself by the window, watching for his mother's car, watching other residents' families arrive, watching the parking lot, hopefully. Through Daniel's perspective, she felt the crushing disappointment each time Sunday ended, and Rebecca hadn't come. Felt him typing on his device. Mommy come tomorrow? Staff would respond gently. We'll call Mommy. She's very busy. Rebecca felt Daniel's interpretation of those words, not as Rebecca being busy, but as Rebecca not loving him enough to visit. Felt the self-blame that formed in his mind. I bad. Mommy leave because I bad. The first birthday. March 15, 2021. The vision shifted to Daniel's 21st birthday. His first birthday without his father, his first birthday in the facility. Rebecca experienced Daniel's excitement the morning of his birthday. Even without full understanding of calendar dates, he knew his birthday was important. Staff had told him, had decorated the common area. All day, Daniel watched for his mother. Surely Mommy would come for his birthday. 21st birthday was important, but Rebecca didn't come, didn't call. Sent a generic gift card that her assistant had ordered. No personal message, no thought. Staff threw Daniel a party. Other residents attended. There was cake. But through Daniel's heart, Rebecca felt the overwhelming loneliness of celebrating without family. Every other resident who had a birthday had someone visit, parents, siblings, someone. Daniel had no one. That night, Rebecca felt Daniel crying in his room, typing on his device. Daddy dead, Mommy gone, nobody loved Daniel. The words shattered her. The endless waiting. The vision accelerated, showing moment after moment across 3 years. Sunday after Sunday, Daniel waiting by the window, hope gradually diminishing, disappointment becoming expectation. The death of hope that Mommy would come. Christmas, Thanksgiving, Easter holidays. Daniel spent watching other residents have family visits while he sat alone. Staff tried to include him, be kind, but they couldn't be his mother. Night after night, Daniel lying in his institutional bed, clutching the old photo of Rebecca, one of the only possessions that connected him to family. Falling asleep with that photo, as if holding it could somehow bring her back. Through Daniel's heart, Rebecca felt his constant confusion. Why did mommy leave? Why doesn't mommy visit? Did I do something wrong? People with autism often blame themselves for social rejection because they struggle to understand the real reasons. Daniel had internalized his mother's abandonment as his own failure. The depression. The vision showed Daniel's gradual emotional shutdown. Rebecca experienced his growing depression, withdrawing from activities, losing interest in things that used to bring joy, spending more time alone. She felt his emotional pain manifesting as physical sensations, the heaviness in his chest, the exhaustion, the difficulty motivating himself to get out of bed. She experienced staff trying to help. Daniel, would you like to do art therapy today? And Daniel shaking his head, retreating to his room, typing, want mommy, only want mommy. The moments Rebecca missed. Jesus showed Rebecca specific moments she'd chosen to miss. Daniel's 22nd birthday, he'd asked staff weeks in advance, Mommy, come for birthday. Staff had called Rebecca. She'd said she'd try. She didn't show up, had a work dinner that night instead. Through Daniel's perspective, Rebecca felt his devastation. He'd believed staff when they said Mommy might come. He'd waited all day, had asked to be dressed nice, had practiced what he'd say on his device, and Mommy never showed up. A medical emergency, Daniel had a seizure, common with autism, was hospitalized overnight. Staff called Rebecca. Daniel is in the hospital. He's okay, but he's asking for you. Rebecca had responded, I'm in the middle of a trial, can't leave. Tell him I'll visit soon. Through Daniel's hospital room perspective, Rebecca felt his fear. Hospitals were overwhelming, scary, and the one person he wanted, the one person who could comfort him, his mother, chose a trial over him. The loneliness. Most devastating was experiencing Daniel's constant, grinding loneliness. Rebecca felt what it was like to be surrounded by people, staff, other residents, but not have anyone who truly knew you, loved you, was there because they wanted to be, rather than because they were paid. She felt Daniel watching staff, members' interactions with other residents who had involved families, watching staff chat with parents during pickups for family visits, feeling invisible, forgotten. She experienced Daniel's nights, the loneliest time. After evening routine, lights out, lying in institutional bed, other residents might be video calling family or excitedly anticipating weekend visits. Daniel had nothing. Through his heart, Rebecca felt the desperate longing. Want mommy. Want home. Want someone love me. The final vision, tonight. The vision shifted to tonight, the very evening Rebecca had signed the permanent placement papers. Rebecca experienced Daniel's routine, dinner in the common area, evening activities, then bedtime at 9:30 p.m. No one had told Daniel what the papers his mother was signing meant. But through his perspective, Rebecca felt a heaviness he couldn't articulate, a sense that something had changed, something was permanently wrong. As he lay in bed tonight, Daniel had typed on his device, Jesus, make mommy come, please. I be good, I try hard. Make mommy love me. The prayer of a disabled 23-year-old who still believed his mother might return if he was just good enough. And 45 minutes later, as that prayer rose to heaven, Jesus had appeared to Rebecca in the parking lot. The truth laid bare. The vision ended abruptly. Rebecca was back in the parking lot, on her knees, sobbing uncontrollably. I destroyed him, Rebecca gasped. I abandoned my son. He's been waiting for me for 3 years, and I've been living my perfect life, while he suffered alone, thinking he wasn't good enough for me to love. Jesus knelt beside her. Yes, you gave birth to Daniel knowing he'd need you, and when he turned out to require more effort than you wanted to give, you abandoned him. Not because you couldn't care for him. You have money, resources, time you spend on leisure. You abandoned him because he embarrassed you, because he didn't fit your image of success, because loving him required sacrifice you weren't willing to make. How do I fix this? Rebecca wept. How do I possibly make this right? By bringing him home, Jesus said firmly, by choosing to be his mother regardless of how difficult it is, by spending the rest of your life showing him the love you withheld for 3 years, by understanding that he may never fully trust you again, and accepting that consequence of your choices. My career, your career, Jesus interrupted, his voice hard now, is not more important than your son. This is a choice, Rebecca. Your successful, comfortable life, or being the mother Daniel needs. You can't have both. Choose. I'll lose my partnership if I reduce my hours to care for him. Then you lose your partnership, Jesus said. Rebecca, Daniel has lost 3 years with his mother. 3 years of waiting, crying, longing for someone who never came. You've lost nothing except the inconvenience of being a parent. It's time to make an actual sacrifice. He began to fade, his form dissolving into light. Go back inside, Jesus' voice echoed. Tell them you're withdrawing the permanent placement papers. Tell them you're bringing Daniel home, and then do it not tomorrow, not next week, but today. Wake him up, tell him he's coming home with mommy, and take him, before you talk yourself out of it. He won't trust me, Rebecca said. Probably not, Jesus agreed. Trust is built over time through consistent presence. You destroyed his trust in 3 years of abandonment. Rebuilding it will take longer. But it starts tonight with one choice. Bring him home. And then he was gone, leaving Rebecca alone in the parking lot, but not the same Rebecca who'd signed abandonment papers an hour earlier. 10:23 p.m. Going back inside, Rebecca stood in the parking lot for 10 minutes, crying, processing what she'd experienced. Every moment of Daniel's loneliness, every night he'd waited for her, every prayer he'd sent to heaven begging Jesus to make mommy love him. She pulled out her phone and looked at her calendar. Tomorrow was a crucial client meeting. Next week was a partnership evaluation. The week after was a major trial. Her career, the thing she'd sacrificed her son for, was right there on her phone. Important meetings, crucial deadlines. But Rebecca remembered something from the vision. Daniel's 22nd birthday. She'd chosen a client dinner over her son's birthday, and through his eyes, she'd felt what that choice had cost him. Rebecca deleted the calendar events, all of them, sent an email to her firm. Family emergency, taking extended leave. We'll discuss details tomorrow. Then she walked back into Harmony Hills Care Facility. The night staff member at the desk looked surprised. Miss Montgomery, did you forget something? Yes, Rebecca said. I forgot my son. Is Director Patterson still here? He left about 20 minutes ago. Is everything okay? No, everything is not okay. I need to see Daniel. Now. Tonight. Ma'am, it's past visiting hours. Residents are in bed. I know, but I need to see my son. Please. Something in Rebecca's voice, the urgency, the brokenness, made the staff member pick up the phone. Let me call the supervisor. 10 minutes later, Rebecca was walking down the hallway toward Daniel's room, accompanied by the night supervisor who'd agreed to this highly irregular visit. Miss Montgomery, if you're here to say goodbye because of not even the permanent placement, we'd really prefer to do that during daytime hours with his therapist present. I'm not saying goodbye, Rebecca interrupted. I'm bringing him home. The supervisor stopped walking. What? The papers I signed tonight, I'm withdrawing them. Daniel is coming home with me. Tonight, if possible. Tomorrow morning, if tonight is too complicated. Miss Montgomery, this is very sudden. We need to plan transitions for residents with autism. Sudden changes can be traumatic. Do you know what's traumatic? Rebecca said, her voice breaking. 3 years of abandonment. 3 years of Sunday afternoons waiting for a mother who never comes. That's traumatic. Yes, this transition will be sudden, but staying here, that's worse. They reached Daniel's room. The supervisor knocked softly, then opened the door. Daniel was in bed but not asleep. He often struggled with sleep. He was lying on his side, clutching the old photo of Rebecca, his iPad device nearby. When he saw Rebecca, his eyes widened. Confusion crossed his face. Mommy never visited at night. Why was Mommy here? Rebecca approached the bed slowly, her heart breaking at how small and alone her 23-year-old son looked in this institutional room. Hi, Daniel, she said softly. Daniel didn't move, didn't reach for his device, just stared at her with confusion, and something else hurt. Betrayal, the look of someone who'd stopped believing in false hope. Daniel, I'm so sorry. Rebecca sat on the edge of his bed the first time she'd sat near him in years. Mommy has been very, very wrong. I left you here, and I didn't visit, and I made you feel like I didn't love you. And baby, that was wrong. You didn't deserve that. You deserve a mother who shows up, who's there, who loves you. Daniel watched her, processing. Rebecca continued, I came here tonight to tell you something. You're coming home, with Mommy, to live with me, not in this facility anymore, in my house, our house, your home. She saw hope flicker in Daniel's eyes, but also fear. He'd been hurt too many times to believe easily. He reached for his device, typed slowly, "Forever? Not leave again?" The question shattered Rebecca. "Forever, I promise. Mommy is not leaving you again, ever." "Why now?" Daniel typed. "Why Mommy come now?" Rebecca thought about how to explain a supernatural encounter to her autistic son. "Because Jesus told me to, because I was wrong, and he showed me how wrong I was. And Daniel, I am so sorry for the 3 years I wasn't here." Daniel's eyes filled with tears. He typed, "I try be good. I try hard. Mommy still leave." "Oh, baby, no." Rebecca started crying. "This wasn't your fault. You didn't do anything wrong. I was wrong. This was all my fault, not yours." For the first time in 3 years, Daniel reached for his mother. Not the desperate grab of abandonment, but a cautious, hopeful reach. Rebecca pulled him into a hug, a real hug, not the brief, uncomfortable contact she'd always given before. She held her son and cried, feeling his body too thin, too tense from years of institutional life and emotional pain. "I'm taking you home," Rebecca whispered. "Tomorrow morning, we'll pack your things and you're coming home with Mommy." The transition. The next morning, Rebecca returned with her car packed. The facility staff were skeptical but legally couldn't prevent a mother from taking custody of her son. The transition specialist sat with Rebecca. "Miss Montgomery, I have to be honest. I'm concerned about this sudden change. You haven't been actively involved in Daniel's care for 3 years. Taking him home suddenly, are you prepared for the reality? He needs assistance with daily living tasks, supervision, routine, structure." "I know," Rebecca said, "and I'm not prepared, not fully, but I'm committed. I'm taking a leave of absence from work. I'm hiring in-home support. I'm getting training on how to care for Daniel properly. And most importantly, I'm showing up. He's coming home to his mother, and I'm going to be the mother he deserves." They packed Daniel's belongings, not much, his clothes, his weighted blanket, his photos, his device. The accumulation of 3 years fit in 3 boxes. Daniel was quiet during the packing, still not quite believing this was real, that Mommy was actually taking him home. As they walked to Rebecca's car, Daniel stopped, typed on his device, "What if Mommy changed mind? Bring Daniel back." Rebecca knelt beside him in the parking lot. "Daniel, I'm not changing my mind. You're coming home. And if you don't believe that's forever yet, I understand. You're going to have to watch me prove it. But I will prove it. Every day. I'm going to be there. I promise." They drove to Rebecca's house in West Hartford, a beautiful colonial that Daniel had never seen. Rebecca had never brought him here, never let him into her real life. Now he was coming home. The first weeks were brutally hard. Daniel struggled with the transition, new environment, new routine, disrupted sense of safety. He had frequent meltdowns, struggled with sleep, would sometimes pack his belongings, thinking Mommy was sending him back. Rebecca struggled too. She'd never actually cared for Daniel full-time, didn't know his routines, his triggers, his communication patterns. She made constant mistakes, but she stayed. She didn't give up. She didn't call the facility and ask them to take him back. She hired a trained support worker, Maria, who'd worked with adults with autism for 15 years. Maria taught Rebecca how to care for Daniel, maintaining routine, recognizing sensory overload, communicating effectively, supporting his needs. Rebecca reduced her work to part-time, took a demotion, lost her senior partner position, accepted a massive pay cut. Her career, the thing she'd sacrificed Daniel for, she now sacrificed for Daniel. Colleagues were shocked. "Rebecca, you're throwing away your career for this?" "I'm not throwing it away," Rebecca said. "I'm putting it in perspective. My son is more important." Rebuilding trust. Trust was the hardest thing to rebuild. Daniel didn't believe at first that Mommy was staying. For months, he'd wake up afraid that today would be the day Mommy sent him back to the facility. Every time Rebecca left the house for groceries, errands, Daniel would panic, type on his device, "Mommy come back?" "Yes, baby. Mommy always comes back, I promise." Slowly, over weeks and months, Daniel began to believe it. The proof wasn't in Rebecca's words, but in her consistent presence. She was there for breakfast every morning, there when he woke from nightmares, there for doctor's appointments, therapy sessions, daily routines. 6 months in, something shifted. Rebecca was putting Daniel to bed, maintaining the nighttime routine they'd established. As she said goodnight, Daniel typed, "Love, Mommy." Rebecca started crying. "I love you too, baby. So much. Mommy, stay. Never leave again. Never leave again. I promise." And this time, Daniel believed her. 1 year later, a year after bringing Daniel home, Rebecca sat with a Christian counselor who specialized in family restoration. "How are you doing?" the counselor asked. "Exhausted," Rebecca admitted. "Daniel's care is full-time. My career is basically over. I'm doing part-time contract work from home now. My social life is gone. My dating life is non-existent. Everything I built for 20 years, the success, the lifestyle, it's gone. Do you regret it?" Rebecca thought about that. "No, I regret the 3 years I abandoned him. I regret choosing my career over my son. But bringing him home, being his mother, no regret at all. It's hard. It's the hardest thing I've ever done. But it's right." "How is Daniel?" Rebecca smiled, genuine, warm. "He's doing better. Still has hard days, but he's happier, more secure. He laughs sometimes. Now I'd never heard him laugh before. He's more engaged, more connected. Having his mother present has made all the difference. And you two, your relationship? We're building it," Rebecca said. "It's not what it would have been if I'd never abandoned him. That damage is permanent, but we're creating something new. He's learning he can trust me. I'm learning how to actually be his mother, instead of just writing checks for his care." 2 years later, testimony. 2 years after Jesus appeared, Rebecca stood in her church, giving her testimony. Daniel sat in the front row with Maria, his support worker. He wore noise-canceling headphones. Church was loud for him, but he'd wanted to come support his mother. 2 years ago, Rebecca said, I signed papers permanently abandoning my autistic son to institutional care. I'd placed him there 3 years earlier and visited maybe 6 times in 3 years. I was ashamed of him, ashamed that he wasn't the perfect child I'd imagined, ashamed that his disability didn't fit my successful image. She looked at Daniel, who was watching her with his iPad device ready. But that night, in the parking lot, Jesus Christ appeared and did something that destroyed my comfortable rationalizations. He made me experience my son's abandonment from Daniel's perspective. He made me feel 3 years of loneliness, confusion, and wondering why Mommy didn't love him. Rebecca's voice broke. I felt Daniel waiting by the window every Sunday for a mother who never came. I felt him praying every night, asking Jesus to make Mommy love him. I felt his 21st birthday alone, no family, believing he was unlovable, and it broke me. I went back inside that night and brought Daniel home, not because I was suddenly equipped to care for him, but because he's my son and I'd been wrong to abandon him. Since then, it's been the hardest 2 years of my life. I lost my career, my lifestyle, everything I'd built, but I gained something infinitely more valuable. My son's trust, my son's love, a real relationship with him. After the testimony, multiple parents approached Rebecca, a mother with tears in her eyes. I have a son with Down syndrome. I've been considering residential placement because he's too difficult. But hearing your story, I'm not doing it. I'm keeping him home. Thank you for being honest about what abandonment costs. A father, my daughter has severe cerebral palsy. I've been distant, leaving most care to my wife. Your testimony convicted me. I need to step up, be present, actually parent her. Daniel, watching from the front row, typed on his device. Maria read it and smiled, then walked it up to show Rebecca. Proud of Mommy. Mommy brave. Love, Mommy. Rebecca pulled Daniel into a hug, and this time, unlike 3 years ago, he hugged back, fully. Trust restored enough for real affection. 3 years later, 3 years after Jesus appeared, Rebecca and Daniel sat together in their living room. Daniel was working on a puzzle, one of his favorite activities. Rebecca was reading, but mostly just enjoying being near her son. Daniel, Rebecca said, do you remember when you lived at Harmony Hills? Daniel looked up, nodded, reached for his device. Remember. Sad place. Mommy not there. I'm so sorry I left you there, that I wasn't there for you. Daniel typed. Mommy here now. "Mommy, stay now. Not sad anymore. Are you happy?" Rebecca asked. Daniel thought about it. He took time to process questions. Then typed, "Happy. Mommy home. Daniel home. Together. Happy." Simple words, but they meant everything. Rebecca had given up a senior partnership at a prestigious law firm, given up a 6-figure salary, given up a lifestyle of travel, luxury, and success. But she'd gained her son, and peace, and the ability to look at herself in the mirror without shame. Her phone buzzed a message from a mother she'd been mentoring. "I almost placed my autistic daughter in residential care because she was too hard, but I remembered your story. I'm keeping her home, getting help, being her mother. Thank you for showing me what really matters." Rebecca showed the message to Daniel. "Look, buddy, your story, our story is helping other families. Other moms are choosing to keep their kids home because they learned from my mistakes." Daniel smiled, a real, genuine smile. Typed, "Good. Other kids need mommy. All kids need mommy." "You're right," Rebecca said. "All kids need their mommy. And I'm so grateful I get to be yours." As they sat together, mother and son, relationship rebuilt from ashes. Rebecca thought about that night 3 years ago in the parking lot. The night Jesus appeared and made her feel what she'd done. It had been the most painful experience of her life, but it had also been the most necessary, because sometimes God saves us by devastating us first, by forcing us to see what we've become, to feel what we've inflicted. Rebecca had been a mother in name, only writing checks, avoiding contact, choosing success over her son. Jesus had shown her what that looked like from the other side, and it had destroyed her comfortable lies completely. Now she was a real mother. Not perfect, she still made mistakes, still struggled, still had hard days, but she was present. She was trying. She was loving Daniel the way he'd always deserved. And that, Rebecca had learned, was what motherhood actually meant. Not perfection, but presence. Not ease, but effort. Not success by the world's standards, but faithfulness to the children God gives you, regardless of whether they fit your expectations. Reflection, music, contemplative, convicting, offering hope for families. Special needs parenting is one of the hardest callings on earth. This story acknowledges that truth without excusing abandonment. Many parents of children with severe autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, or other significant disabilities reach breaking points. The exhaustion is real. The isolation is real. The grief of shattered expectations is real. But Rebecca's story isn't about a parent who reached a breaking point and needed help. It's about a parent who had resources, money, and options, and chose to abandon her son because he was inconvenient to her successful image. There's a difference between seeking respite care and support while remaining actively involved, placing a child in residential care temporarily during a crisis, and emotionally abandoning your child because they don't fit your life plan. Rebecca did the latter. She didn't place Daniel because she couldn't care for him. She was wealthy, could afford in-home support, could have adjusted her schedule. She placed him because she didn't want to care for him, because he embarrassed her, because disability didn't fit her image of success. That's not parenting failure from exhaustion. That's deliberate abandonment disguised as getting him professional care. If you're a parent of a special needs child, and you're exhausted, struggling, reaching your breaking point, that's normal. Seek help, get respite care, find support, join a support group, see a therapist, take breaks. But don't abandon your child. Don't let shame about having a disabled child lead you to emotional or physical abandonment. Your child, regardless of their abilities, regardless of how different they are, needs you, not your money, not professional caregivers, you, their parent. And if you're in Rebecca's position, if you've already placed your child in care and you've been distant, if you visit rarely, if you've let guilt and shame keep you away, hear this. It's not too late. Go get your child. Bring them home. Rebuild what's been broken. Will it be hard? Yes. Will trust need to be rebuilt? Absolutely. Will your life change dramatically? Without question. But the alternative, continuing to abandon your child while they wait and wonder why you don't love them, that's worse. For them, and ultimately, for you. The Bible is clear about parental responsibility. It's not conditional on children being easy, successful, or fitting our expectations. It's a covenant, a sacred trust. Jesus appeared to Rebecca because a disabled young man had been praying for 3 years, asking God to make his mommy love him. Those prayers moved heaven, and God answered not by forcing Rebecca to feel love, but by forcing her to feel Daniel's pain until it broke her hard heart. Sometimes that's how God saves us, by devastating us with the truth of what we've done, by removing the comfortable distance that lets us rationalize sin, by making us experience consequences from the victim's perspective. If you're a parent who's been distant from your special needs child, you might not need Jesus to appear. You just need to make a choice. Will you continue choosing comfort over your child, or will you do the hard work of showing up, being present, loving them regardless of difficulty? Daniel's message at the end was profound. All kids need mommy. Not just typical kids, not just easy kids, all kids, including the ones with autism, cerebral palsy, Down syndrome, disabilities of every kind. They need their parents, not perfect parents, but present parents, parents who show up, parents who choose them over careers, over image, over comfort. Rebecca lost her partnership, lost her salary, lost her lifestyle, but she gained her son, and peace, and the ability to live without shame. That trade success for soul, career for child, it's the trade Jesus calls all of us to make when necessary. And for parents, it's not even a trade. It's just doing what we vowed to do when we became parents. Love our children, regardless of cost. Choose your child. Choose presence. Choose love, before it's too late.
Subscribe to Tales of God's Grace for more true miracles and stories of redemption. Your support helps us reach and restore families around the world. Don't forget to tag a friend and share this video, so together we can spread faith, love, and healing where it's needed most.